Now, the Nielsen report says that the average American home has a television set on almost 7 hours a day. Now, you ready for this? The average American couple talks 20 minutes a week. So that's about, 3 minutes a day. We'll give it an average of 3 minutes a day of communicating to one another versus the television set is on for 7 hours a day. I don't think we today know how addicted we are to this television set. They have done studies where they've pulled out the TV set and people have gone through withdrawals. I don't know if any of you have heard about that story where they took, I think it was about 10 families, and they asked them to participate in a study, and could they not watch TV for 3 or 4 months and keep a log of what went on. Well, I think out of the 10 families that started, there were maybe 2 or 3 that were left, and the others couldn't do it because they, for whatever the reasons are. But most of us, we are mesmerized sitting there in a very impassive way. You see, TV is not communicating because we have to just sit there and take in everything, but that's not communication. And so I think that the generation growing up is numbed, to be honest with you, and they don't know how to communicate because, and then now you add Pac-Man and all the other little video games and video toys, and these kids are glued to those television sets sometimes 8, 10, 12 hours a day versus if you think about if there was no electricity going on, what would you have to resort to? Obviously, playing and communicating with another human being. So this numbing effect that's happening in general to society, I think, is a very scary thing for the future. Now, what happened to communication? I don't think anybody takes a vow of silence in the beginning. I don't think anybody gets married or goes into a relationship and says, well, I think I will be quiet for the rest of my life. And if you see a young couple, usually you don't have to be a psychologist to see how long a couple has been together, because you can go into any restaurant and say, gee, you know, this looks like their first date. This couple looks like it's probably a fairly new relationship. That couple looks to me as if they've been in a relationship forever. I have been in a restaurant where I have seen the fellow sitting there with a newspaper and the woman is sitting there with a book, and they are sitting the entire dinner looking glued into whatever periodical or article they're reading and have nothing to do with one another. I remember we went to my husband and I were in a Chinese restaurant, and at the end, the waitress came over and I said, can I have a doggy bag? And I want to bring home some of this for my children. She said, you're married? And I said, well, yeah, of course we're married. And I don't remember how many years at that time. I said, why? Why would you ask that? And she said, because I just pay attention to a lot of the people that come in here and you talk the whole time. So I just didn't think for some reason that you were married, that you were just in a new relationship. So it's interesting that people will go out to a restaurant and still not talk to one another. Anyway. Throughout recorded time, when somebody is dying, they are on their deathbed, they have never said, I should have spent more time at the office. Nobody. That has never been said. So the question becomes is how do I get more quality time out of the time that I have right now? And hopefully you will get that in the next couple of weeks. I'd like to call your attention to a song that some of you may know by Harry Chapin called Cats in the Cradle. And it's a father's tale of a relationship with his son. A child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay, and he learned to walk while I was away, and he was talking before I knew it, and as he grew, he'd say, I'm going to be like you, Dad. You know I'm going to be like you. Isn't that every little boy's dream, just to be like Dad? And, of course, the chorus is the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man in the moon. When are you coming home, Dad? I don't know when, but we'll get together then, son. You know we'll have a good time then. And again, here's the father postponing happiness for some future event. Well, the song continues and says, my son turned 10 just the other day. He said, thanks for the ball, Dad. Come on, let's play. Can you teach me to throw? I said, not today. I've got a lot to do. He said, oh, that's okay. And he walked away, but his smile never dimmed. He said, I'm going to be like you, Dad. I'm going to be like you. And, of course, the chorus again. Then it talks about the son coming home from college, so much like a man that the father just had to say, son, I'm proud of you. Can you sit for a while? He shook his head, and then he said with a smile, what I'd really like, Dad, is to borrow the car keys. See you later. Can I have them, please? Now the son is turning out to be just like the father, isn't he? And later, the father retires and says, I've long since retired. My son's moved away. I called him up just the other day. I said, I'd like to see you if you don't mind. He said, I'd love to, Dad, if I could find the time. You see, my new job's a hassle and the kids have the flu, but it's sure nice talking to you, Dad. It's been sure nice talking to you. And as I hung up the phone, it occurred to me he'd grown up just like me. My boy was just like me. You know, some of you continue certain behaviors that are not rewarding because your dad did them. You saw him in a hurry. You saw him paying attention to his job. And we've got to stop. And I know the expression is trite, but smell the roses. Does anybody have a response to that song?
The Cats in the Cradle song, every time I hear that, it always hurts. And it's always made me want to cry. Because my father is he's the guy in the song. He has a 70-hour work week, and it doesn't matter if he's a police officer or a salesperson or whatever he does, it just hurts a lot, you know, and I've made it my goal, I don't want to be like that. But at the same time, now that I'm getting into the workforce, I'm realizing it's real hard not to be like that.
I hope everybody heard that comment, that it does hurt when you hear that song, if you identify with it. See, the best you can do is, if you know something hurts, is the only control you have is over your life and what you do with the future. And
remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. No work and no TV. What will people do on the Sabbath? Talk and have a relationship with one another. No more pain, like the boy in the song. If you love families and want time with them, remember this Sabbath day to keep it holy. So, time together, if you love families. Now, how does my critic feel about the Sabbath day to keep it holy?
The Sabbath commandment. Remember the Sabbath and to keep it holy. That doesn't mean a thing.
Wow, it sounds like Ben Gully doesn't like the Sabbath. He would rather be like the guy in that song and too busy working than to spend time with his own kids. Destroying the time together by saying the Sabbath doesn't mean a thing. And he said it didn't mean a thing. Like it didn't have any relationship with Jesus and Jesus didn't mean a thing. Wow, he is a really interesting character. Hello everyone out there on YouTube, this is Spoke777 here on YouTube, and I hope you enjoyed that segment from Ellen Kreitman's Light His Fire. The program is about relationships between men and women, and more so about the men's part in the relationship. And she has another series called Light His Fire, which is for the women. Now, you just got to see how the Sabbath is a very good solution to the problem, and a very good suggestion for anyone out there who wants to spend time with his or her spouse to communicate. The Sabbath day. The husband not going to work, the wife not going to work, so they're both home. The TV's turned off because on the Sabbath, because most Sabbatarians do not watch television on the Sabbath unless it's religious programming. Which then it's usually limited because you do believe that you are to spend time with your family. God does expect that. However, my critic does not think that way. He says it doesn't matter. Question, why did God put that in the Ten Commandments to begin with? Question, doesn't like all the laws in the Old Testament relating to the sanctuary and its services point to Jesus on the cross, and you say they don't mean a thing? Because you always keep saying the Sabbath is ceremonial, and you're talking about the other Sabbaths and trying to hodgepodge this one with it, which is a different Sabbath altogether. And I always ask everybody, when did this Sabbath begin? Right at creation, as it says in the Ten Commandments, before sin came into this planet, before we had the need of a Redeemer. Therefore, it is not a symbol or type of Jesus dying on the cross or anything of that nature. But now back to that. He says it didn't mean a thing. Basically to him, working on the Sabbath, he doesn't care. He'll tell you fathers, go work. Tell your mothers, go work. And whatever day you feel like doing whatever, okay, whatever. So you have no time together. Because the Sabbath concept does not work with the day and seven concept. Everybody has to be on the same page on the same day, otherwise it's a pointless endeavor. Because you're not going to spend time with people who are not going to spend the time with you at all on the Sabbath. So, you have understood that my critic does not seem to care so much about quality family time put together by saying the Sabbath doesn't matter. This is Spoke777 here on YouTube, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and God bless.